There are major problems in gaming right now with censorship. There is so much to talk about, and the biggest thing right now is MasterCard and Visa facing major backlash after hundreds of games have been removed from online stores Steam and itch.io. Now, let me just summarize things overview, and then I will go into the nitty-gritty details here. First things first, with any form of media, there are always going to be some odd things out there. For example, let's just talk about books, and then we'll go back to video games. When it comes to books, you could read anything under the sun. You could read an autobiography, or you could read some of these romance novels that are extremely popular, but have some absolutely wild topics and themes that are tackled in the books. But do you see any censorship? Now, there is definitely censorship in schools in the United States where books are banned, but as far as the regular everyday consumer, you could go out and you could buy some pretty wacky books that tackle some really wild subjects and themes. Then, if you apply that same argument to video games though, right now video games are experiencing so much censorship, so much so that MasterCard and Visa have actually removed games from Steam and itch.io. And that is the payment processor, not the platform. The payment processor themselves have removed the games. So it begs the question, where did this all start? And I'm gonna go over all of it. So it all started from Collective Shout, and I will say there are some valid arguments here. They created this post that was addressed to all of these different payment processors about, hey, you payment processors, Visa, MasterCard, you guys are profiting from these really horrible themes on these games. Themes including rape, incest, and child abuse. These are horrible things. So Collective Shout exposed the sale of these games, and I don't even know if I want to read this out loud because me personally, I would not be playing these games. But again, let's just flip the script here and let's talk about it in the framework of books. There are a lot of books that I would argue romanticize really horrible things like abuse or like rape or other terrible, terrible things, but you don't see those books being censored. Now, while I wouldn't read those books or play games like this, the fact of the matter is that there is a lot of censorship happening. So after Collective Shout posted their complaint online, this one particular game was geo-blocked in Australia. Then they discovered hundreds of other games featuring these themes on Steam and on itch.io. And I think this paragraph from their open letter is something to talk about. These games endorsing men's sexualized abuse and torture of women and girls fly in the face of efforts to address violence against women. We do not see how facilitating payment transactions and deriving financial benefit from these violent and unethical games is consistent with your corporate values and mission statements. But again, let's just flip the script and let's talk about books, just books. I am sure that these payment processors also process payments for people who are buying books that tackle the same themes. And even if the books aren't a simulation themselves, I would argue that a lot of these newer romance books are actually romanticizing these themes that could be seen as violent and unethical. Point being, it's a fine line, and I am not the one who is going to be determining where the line is. But the fact of the matter is that it is censorship. So now fast forward, and MasterCard and Visa are now facing a ton of backlash after they just forcefully removed games, which is censorship. So the payment companies such as Visa, MasterCard, and Stripe are facing public backlash, including Elon Musk for pressuring online gaming platforms to remove hundreds of games in response to a campaign from an Australian anti-porn lobby group. Now, this is definitely a point of concern here. There is a lot of censorship going on, a lot of censorship that is in the works, and oftentimes it seems to always have that surface level presentation of we want to protect people from things that are sexualized or hypersexualized or like pornography. But the problem is that oftentimes when some of these bills come into place or when the censorship does occur, it's censoring a lot more than just the bad stuff, which is why I say there does seem to be a pretty fine line here. itch.io, an independent gaming platform, last week removed all adult or not safe for work games from appearing in its library in a hasty move to prevent payments for games being blocked across its entire service. itch.io said that it was bowing to demands from payment providers to ensure we can continue to operate and provide a marketplace for all developers. The move came after an open letter organized by Collective Shout, which I read. itch.io's swift compliance, however, meant removing not just the content in Collective Shout's claim, but all NSFW adult content from browsing and search. At least temporarily, some games were also removed entirely. This is a time-critical moment for itch.io. The situation developed rapidly, and we had to act urgently to protect the platform's core payment infrastructure. In other words, they had to protect their major income source. Unfortunately, this meant it was not realistic to provide creators with advance notice before making this change. We know this is not ideal, and we apologize for the abruptness for this change. Some users reported they were unable to play games removed from the sale that they had already paid for, which itch.io has denied. Now there is a change.org petition calling for payment processors to stop controlling what we can watch, read, or play has gotten right now 156,000 verified signatures. And a very large concern here right now with the removal of these games is it was also resulting in removal of games with LGBTQ plus content being removed. And one petition signer, who is a member of that community, said they were concerned that banning these games would be the start of cracking down on LGBTQ plus content itself. Banning the sexual content never stops there. It always includes non-sexual things. As such, the fight to protect people's rights to sexual expression is vital for protecting my right to exist, they wrote. But it does look like there is an update. Tankard Rice said the blanket removal of these games was not the objective of the campaign, noting that itch.io has said it would introduce compliance measures for NSFW pages to allow games as long as they abided by the policies of the payment processors linked to their account. It is likely many games will be restored to the platform after itch.io's review, she said. Payment processors have a right to determine what services they will provide according to their CSR, corporate social responsibility, mission, and values. Now, personally, I will admit, I do think that there are some valid things here, like this quote: "The internet has no borders. Women and girls everywhere are impacted by male violence against women and misogyny in general, which we believe these games perpetuated." And yeah, I do think that is a valid concern here. Again, me personally, I would not be seen dead playing any of these games. But the problem here is that, oh, okay, these games are bad and we're gonna censor them. But then what ends up happening next? Now that the envelope is pushed, what else is gonna be censored? Where are the rules defined here? And I think right now it's very important to define the rules, and hopefully this will be amended so that there is not censorship here, but instead there are just very clear guidelines and rules to say, hey, this is out of hand. We're not going to accept processing sale of games that include things like this, which again, that one game that Collective Shout pointed out, dear Lord, I would not even read the description out loud. That game sounds absolutely wild. It is completely out of hand and inappropriate. It's terrible. But again, it's a valid concern, because if you have a game that represents someone who is in the LGBTQ plus community, what ends up happening there? Where are we going to be now censoring games with themes that would represent someone who belongs to that community? Anyways, the rabbit hole gets even deeper because people now have been reaching out to Visa and they got this response. "Hello, thank you for reaching out and sharing your perspective. As a global company, we follow the laws and regulations everywhere we do business. While we explicitly prohibit illegal activity on our network, we are equally committed to protecting legal commerce. If a transaction is legal, our policy is to process the transaction. We do not make moral judgments on legal purchases made by consumers. Visa does not moderate content sold by merchants, nor do we have visibility into the specific goods or services sold when we process a transaction. When a legally operating merchant faces an elevated risk of illegal activity, we require enhanced safeguards for the banks supporting those merchants." This response from Visa is so out of touch because it literally says, Visa does not moderate content sold by merchants, nor do we have visibility into the specific goods or services sold when we process a transaction. Not only is that not taking accountability, but that is just downright lying. Essentially what they did is they put the pressure on Steam and itch.io and they said, hey, we are going to put your income source to an absolute halt. You are going to make no money until you take all of this stuff down. And what is that? That is literally moderating content, which is censorship. And it was so silly and ridiculous how this response was not taking accountability and just downright lying. For more information on Visa's policies, please visit our network integrity page on visa.com. Thank you for writing, Visa Webmaster. Which is the biggest nothing burger response ever. It basically was saying, hey, just go on our website and look at our policies there. And hey, we don't make moral judgments and judge people on the legal purchases they are made by the consumer. But get this, it doesn't make any sense because these payment processors like Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal, betting and gambling right now is so unbelievably normalized and out of control, and they are happy to accept money. All of these crazy gambling websites that have been so normalized and rampant and out of control. So really, if you want to talk about illegal activity, anyways, if we do look at the petition, the dumbed down summary is that MasterCard and Visa are interfering with legal entertainment, often under pressure from advocacy groups who want to censor what they deem problematic. We demand an end to this censorship of fiction and the right to choose the stories we enjoy without moral policing. And I think the demands of of this petition are extremely valid. Stop censoring legal fictional content that does comply with the law and platform standards, reject influence from activist groups, be fully transparent about content restrictions and the rationale behind them, and protect the creator's right to make legal adult content and ensure a fair appeals process for any penalized media. So again, all of that to me seems valid. I think both sides have very, very valid points here. I have to say, looking at the open letter from Collective Shout, that one game that they focused in on is absolutely wild. I don't really know anyone or can think of anyone who would actually download and play a game like that, but I get it. There are people out there who play those games, and you know what? No judgment. I wouldn't play it myself, but I would argue that a game like that with that premise definitely is not complying with just like whatever sort of standards, legal codes, or as the petition states, laws and platform standards. I don't think that game followed laws and platform standards. But it does beg the question here, there is something going on that is very sinister, because in the past year, Australia has approved the social media ban on people under the age of 16. In the UK, there is now an age verification, forcing a variety of platforms to roll out mandatory age verification tools, as well as in the United States, where the Kids Online Safety Act has now recirculated and resurrected into Congress again. So the main point of concern here is that on the surface level, it always starts with something that absolutely is important. Kids should be protected from bad things like pornography. Yes, 100%. But at the end of the day, that really should be done at the household level. Parents should be protecting their kids from bad things online. That is a parenting problem. And what ends up happening is that when the government is allowed to make these decisions for the households, now we're getting and crossing into the territory over the fine line into censorship, government control, and violating the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. So yeah, there are more videos that I am going to make talking about this. I don't know what it is, but there is just censorship out the wazoo lately. And I'm just going to say it one more time. I just do not get it how there's so much censorship issues right now happening in gaming. But in books, dear Lord, go to your local Target and pick up some of these romance books. The topics that are tackled in these books, it is crazy. And the fact that they're romanticized goes another layer of crazy. But it does beg the question, where is the line drawn for video games? And are these activist groups going to continue to interfere and fearmonger and incite really, really serious censorship and continue pushing the boundary until things beyond bad adult content are going to be censored? What more is going to be censored now?